Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful and historic neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Colleen Brunetti. She's returning to the show to celebrate her brand new picture book, Share a Little Kindness. Before we invite Colleen into the studio to tell us about her beautiful picture book, I would love to take just a few seconds to tell you about my picture books. That's right, I'm the author of 3 really fun picture books that I'd love for you to check out. The Great Maratini is the story of a aspiring and some would say clumsy magician named Sam, who is known as the Great Maratini, and he discovers that the greatest transformation of all is transforming feelings of kindness into action to help another human being. Real Magic is the story of, it tells a story of something really incredibly magic that happened to me on stage, involving a beautiful little girl named Maria. And Love That I Matter to You is just a beautiful story that you are going to love hearing your kids read to you. All 3 books are available on Amazon. Joining us on the line right now from West Hartford and Connecticut, our guest is returning to the show to celebrate a brand new self-illustrated and, of course, self-written picture book. It's called Share a Little Kindness. Please welcome back Colleen Brunetti. Colleen, welcome back to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. That was kind of awkward, self-illustrated and self-written. I guess the written part is like kind of one of those assumed things. But congratulations on illustrating your first children's book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Share a Little Kindness, please.
Sure. So I first wrote the original manuscript on my cell phone 2 Thanksgivings ago. I was sitting on the couch watching my kids play and mess around, and I don't know what made me so introspective that day, maybe the holiday, but I started thinking about, what do I really want for these kids in this world, right? So my kids are 8 years apart. They're in very different stages of life. But the things we want for our kids are things like to be happy and healthy and successful, but it's more than that, right? It's about putting kindness into the world and doing good for others. And then even more than that, it's about speaking your truth and knowing when it's your turn to listen or to apologize or to stand up for yourself. And so when I think about who I want my children to be, I want them to be putting a lot of good in the world and also knowing how to care for themselves in a really positive way. And so I wrote it out as a poem and put it away and thought, well, this would be cool. I would like to put this out someday. And I've always wanted to illustrate my own books. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that too. Maybe this is the time. And then life got busy, and then life got very slow because the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, it seemed like a time where we needed kindness more than ever, right? Kindness for others, empathy for what everyone was going through individually and collectively, and a lot of extra kindness for ourselves, because we all had to stop, but also keep moving forward and learn to navigate the world in a whole different way. And so I thought, you know what, now is the time to put this book out, because it's a wish for not just my children, but it's a wish for the world right now. Mm-hmm. And so I dove in and started to see what I could create.
Well, that's wonderful. I think those are great questions that your book brings up. Who do we want our kids to be when they grow up? What kind of people do we hope they become? But I think it's also challenging for parents, because as parents, when we think about, well, who do we want our kids to be? We want them to be kind. We want them to be thoughtful, mindful. Great. Oh, That means I have to be kind. I have to be selfless. I have to be generous. And even though I think most of us think that we're kind and thoughtful and selfless and generous, when we really examine it, sometimes we're not as kind as we'd like to be.
That's a very powerful and self-challenging statement. It's hard to do all the time, right? And I guess this isn't in the poem, but there's a time where you have to have grace and forgive yourself too, for maybe not reacting in a way that is the most beneficial to everyone around you.
Yeah. So tell me, what's the reaction been for your kids? First off, it's an interesting audience. You know, you have kids who are 8 years apart in their lives. They're looking at the world in different ways. I'm wondering, when they read that, what were they thinking? What did they share with you?
So my little one, she's 6 now. She is learning to read. And so it's really fun for her to kind of repeat the poem back. She sort of half memorized it and can practice her reading skills and talk about it at a kindergarten level, right? Being kind, sharing with our friends. My high schooler is a little bit more teenagery. He likes that Mom is an author. He knows that he's been featured either directly or sort of indirectly in the work that I do. But I hear he does tell his friends that those books are out. So, it's a little bit different for an almost 15-year-old.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I have a 17-year-old niece who is, we are very close, and she will do anything in the world. She'll dig holes for me. She'll lift things and carry things and go to other states to help me move family into apartments and whatnot. But I'm not going to sit down and listen to your podcast. Just not something I do.
Someday she will. It'll be a great resource. I think my son did enjoy it just because I illustrated. It was all digital, showing him some of the tricks and things I was learning as I went along. I had never illustrated before, or done any art digitally, really. And so it was all coming from a very, very beginner point of learning. And sharing some of that with him has been fun.
So I guess that's something, one of the things you're saying you want your kids to stand up for themselves. And I'm imagining one of the things you want your kids to do is to challenge themselves and step outside of their comfort zone every once in a while so they can grow. Where did you find the courage to step out of your comfort zone and to actually do the illustrations for this book?
So it's kind of a personality trait I've always had. Jump in first and figure it out after. I just, I think I'm driven more by what my heart and soul tells me I want to do than what my brain already knows. So I did a lot of YouTubing and looking. I took some online classes that I had signed up for and just sort of figured it out as I went. The nice thing about working digitally is you can mess up without any major impact on your work most often. You can work in layers, so you can really tease out certain pieces of illustrations and go back and just wipe the whole thing and start again without losing what you've already laid down. But I think that comes back to resilience, right? We don't know everything. We can't know everything. But if we want something badly enough, if it's something we're really inspired to do or try, not knowing how shouldn't be the barrier. Yeah. And so I hope that's something that translates to my kids is this sense of it's entrepreneurship and it's a can-do attitude. And it's just having enough faith in yourself to know that you can figure it out. Mm-hmm.
As you were talking about the benefits of creating art digitally, I had this horrific flashback to writing a 500-word essay in high school on the old Underwood typewriter and getting to that last sentence, and the paper had to be perfect, and getting to the last sentence and making a typo and thinking, I have to go to the beginning and start over.
Digital is a gift. It definitely is.
Absolutely. It really is. And kids and young adults, you have no idea How different, how blessed you are to be able to work in this digital world. Tell me, remind us a little bit about you. You have this passion about helping people, find their best selves and live their best lives.
I do. So that stems from a deeply personal experience that I went through over 13 years ago and continue with today when I was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness and given by Dr. Google 3 to 5 years to live. And that was news that obviously is just world shattering. My now almost 15-year-old was a toddler, and I didn't really have a clear idea of what the future was going to be like in an instant. And I thought I knew before my diagnosis. And so I had to remake everything. And that was a long journey, but it really boiled down to none of us are promised tomorrow, but mine is a little bit more pressing than the average 20-something-year-old young lady. And I have to make the best of every moment I have. It's a true sense of carpe diem. And it's a true journey of constant reinvention, adjusting to this diagnosis that I received and making something of it. Mm-hmm. And what it comes down to for me is it doesn't actually matter what the diagnosis is. It does in the day-to-day and the management, but it doesn't matter in that I get to choose how I respond to it. And that's a truth that is universal. Mm-hmm. We all are going to go through things. In my first book, it was food allergies and intolerances. In my second book, and PIP 2, it was siblings were having a hard time getting along. And those are little things in the big picture, but they're really big when you're a kid. And so to try to sort of teach that universal truth based on what I went through in my 20s is very important to me. Mm-hmm. So that's where that all comes from.
Yeah. It is incredibly important and can change your life, how we respond to different things, how we responded to the pandemic, how we respond to, the issues that we have with our loved ones and our spouses. What kind of advice can you give to people to kind of think through those things and not react emotionally and react out of fear, but to sit down and to make those choices with the best information you can, so you can make the very best choice you can?
That's a great question. So I always start with acknowledging the hard parts. It's okay to be shattered by something. It's okay to be frustrated by something. It's okay to be sad and angry. Those feelings are valid and important to walk through. And so I always try to make sure that my audiences, my clients, they understand that's all right. We don't have to always put on a happy front. But the important part is we don't stay in that headspace for too long. And so we start taking very concrete steps to get out of it. So even, going back to the first book on food allergies, the boy in the book is very upset because he can't eat like his friends do. Well, that stinks when you're a kid. And honestly, it kind of stinks when you're an adult.
Yes, it does. It's okay. As a matter of fact, it does.
It's okay. We can dislike this. But all right, we know how we feel about it. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. What's the next step? Because being upset about it long term isn't going to change the outcome. And we can change the outcome. We might not be able to change the diagnosis or the situation or the fact that your little sister is driving you crazy. And we sure can't change a pandemic in the moment. Collectively, we can do a lot to make it better. But we do get to choose how we respond to these stressors in our lives. And so I try to sort of guide in choosing concrete ways that we can do that, whether they're big things like putting a book in the world or little things like ending with a good night hug and kiss, even though you've had a frustrating day.
Boy, isn't that such a great prescription, ending the day with a hug.
Yeah.
Yeah, so important.
My mom always taught us never to go to bed angry. Easier said than done sometimes, but I think it's solid advice.
It really is solid advice, because I tell you, when I go to bed angry, I can't go to sleep. I'm just up all night.
And then you're going to be more frustrated the next morning.
Hey, you talked a little bit, and you mentioned it, but, resiliency, we need that when we're making these choices, because I think one reason that we kind of fall apart and react in a way that's hurtful to ourselves and others is because we don't feel like we can rise up. We don't feel that we have that resiliency. How can we teach our kids to be resilient?
Let's see. How can we teach our kids to be resilient? I think the most important thing is that we're listening and acknowledging first, right? So going back to that idea of it's okay to feel the big feelings. I think teaching them to identify those feelings, to talk about why they feel that way, to give them a little bit of time to feel that way, and then just start asking them, not here's what you need to do to fix it, but what do you want to do to make this better? What's one thing that you can do? Who do you need to talk to? One of the most powerful things I've ever said to my son, quite by accident, he was very upset and I wasn't getting anywhere with him. I was trying to mom him, like give him advice. Wasn't landing well. And finally I said, do you need me to just listen to you, or do you need me to help you solve this problem? And he said, I need you to just listen. Okay, I can do that. And that was step one. And once he got it all off of his chest, then he was like, all right, now I'm ready to talk about solutions.
That really is. And for a parent and for some people in general, being able to just listen is really hard. I know myself, I'm one of those people which, if I start hearing someone complain or, I have this problem, the first, my mind just starts clicking. It's like, okay, well, how can I help you solve this? And it's really important for me sometimes to take a breath and think, maybe they don't want me to solve it for them. Maybe they just need to vomit this out.
Yes, and sometimes it is word vomit. It absolutely is. It's messy and a little unpleasant, and that's okay too. And I think especially as parents, right? Because we probably do have a solution most of the time, or at least some ideas to get started. It's not always helpful to lead with those.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, you're mentioning your other books, and I know we celebrated Aiden and the first time you visited with us. Tell us about Pip 2.
Sure. So, and Pip too. So I do have these two kids who are 8 years apart, and the dynamic I think is probably not different than most sibling dynamics when you have a big one and a little one. Maybe a little bit more amplified because they're so far apart, so their interests rarely are aligned. But the story is about this little girl named Pip, and she follows her big brother throughout the day and just destroys everything in her path. Everything he tries to do, she just makes a disaster of it. And it's meant to be a very lighthearted, funny look at the sibling relationship. It is illustrated by Dan Karsten, who did my first book as well. And he is a master at comedy in illustrations. So I hope more than anything, kids really laugh. I wanted to just do something light and fun, but at the end they do come together and the big brother looks at the little girl and was like, it's been quite a day, but I guess you're all right. And she says, you too, big brother. I love you. Good night. Good night. And it kind of comes full circle where he's like, okay. And she's like, it's because I love you so much. So that's Ann Pip too.
That's really cool. I'm really happy that you have this way to kind of celebrate the moments in your family and share them with the world. I'm wondering, do you ever take time to sit back and to think that there are families literally all over the world who are bringing Pip and share a little kindness into their homes, and they're creating wonderful family memories around words that you crafted?
I love that idea. It's, when you're a creative, when you're an artist, it's very fulfilling to do the work for yourself, but it's even more fulfilling to know that you've touched someone's life or you've made their day a little bit brighter. So the idea of kids snuggled up and reading these books makes me very happy. I love it when my readers will send me pictures of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, readers need to know where to send pictures, and they need to know where to connect with you. So where can people go online to connect with Colleen Brunetti?
It's ColleenBrunetti.com. Easy to find.
Genius. Brilliant. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Share a Little Kindness and many other books too, Colleen Brunetti. Hey, Colleen, thanks so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a delight to speak with you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Two great guests will be returning to the show. Lori Olinsky and Allison Bork, two wonderful, successful, self-published authors, will be on the show to talk to other authors about how best to market their books. They're going to be sharing some of their experience and wisdom, so you don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the show. Now, if you are the author of a great children's book, you absolutely want to check out our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Reads. Our Certified Great Read program has helped a number of authors let the world know that their book is worthy of their consideration. If our panel believes your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a whole lot of really powerful promotional tools that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. And when I mean crowd, I really mean crowd. There are literally thousands of books that are published every single month. Check it out today, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Read. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Colleen Brunetti. Be sure to check out Share a Little Kindness. I also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Helen Frazier, Justina Thompson. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank Augie the doggy for having my back here in the studio, even though his paw's a little sore. He's kind of on the shelf, but he's down here keeping me safe anyway. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.